Do you need a water? Welcome back to the interview area. Please join me in welcoming world number 1, Scottie Scheffler. Scottie, just a few quick thoughts on the golf course.
Yeah, golf course is good. Rough is healthy. Golf course is in great shape, so it should shape up for a really good week. It doesn't look like we're getting rain today or tomorrow, so it should be pretty firm come Wednesday, which should make it play nice.
We're going to open it up to questions right here on the right.
Scottie, just wondering what memories you have of being here, almost a decade ago, sister on the bag, playing well, just what you remember.
Yeah, I remember coming here and thinking it was really fun, really cool to be able to play in the U.S. Open. It was my first major, and it was maybe my third start on the pro tour at the time. I think I'd played in the Byron Nelson once and then St. Jude once, FedEx St. Jude, and then so it was a very cool experience. I played a practice round with Dustin and Brooks. I felt like I learned a lot from those guys at the time, and it was definitely made me excited to try and get out here for real because it was a pretty fun week. Obviously, I had a pretty good first round. I didn't play as good in the second. That was a tough pill to swallow, missing the cut by 1. But what I really remembered was coming back the next year, and I think I made like a putt on 18 to get into a playoff in qualifying, end up getting through the playoff in qualifying, and then coming in and finishing low am. That was something I kind of marked on my calendar, something I wanted to get back and try and do because I was pretty disappointed the way it ended for me here 9 years ago, and so it was nice to kind of bounce back and have a better week the next year.
Center left, King.
Scottie, I wanted to ask you about an interaction you had on hole 8 today in your practice round. So obviously both you and Sam hit driver, but it looked like Noah Kent hit a 3-iron, and Sam said something like, this is making us feel bad about ourselves. But can you just talk us through that hole and what y'all were chatting about?
Well, Noah has got this 3-iron that he carries like 270 in his bag. It's something I think he had built this week, and it could be a bit of a fairway finder for him. We were kind of messing around because Sam and I both grabbed driver, and Noah grabbed his 3-iron. And then he asked his caddy if it got to the green, and I was like, absolutely not. No way that got to the green, even though I think it did, but I wasn't going to tell him that.
Yeah, it did get on the green somehow. And then just generally, what are your thoughts on that hole, and how are you going to approach it this week?
I'm going to try to hit the green, whether it's a 3-wood or driver from that back tee. Depends on wind direction, but basically you're just going to try and get the ball on the green and 2-putt.
On the right, Dave.
Yeah, Scottie. Good afternoon. Question about the rough, and curious if we know that length is a factor and is a weapon, but how important is just pure strength in dealing with this golf course?
I'd say there's definitely a strength factor coming out of the rough. This golf course, there's not many trees out there, but there's so many bunkers. I don't really know if this is a golf course you can necessarily just overpower with kind of a bomb and gouge type strategy, especially with the way the rough is. Like, you have to play the angles. Some of the greens are elevated, other ones are pitched extremely, away from you. And there's certain holes where, like, you look at like 3 and 4, you got the church pews on the left, and then you get to some of the holes on the back. Like 14's a short hole, but the bunkering is so, like, just one after another of walled bunkers. There's not really many areas where you step up on the tee box, you're like, hey, I can miss it right here, or hey, I can kind of shade towards the left side of the fairway because right's really bad. It's like, actually, if you hit in the right rough, you're probably not going to get to the green. If you hit in the left rough, you're probably not going to get to the green. So might as well try and split the difference there and hit in the middle.
On the left, Doug.
A couple of things. What kind of experiences have you had in the rough this week? In terms of what kind of various shots have you played? What kind of lies have you given yourself?
It's kind of interesting. It's one of those weeks where you're not even really sure if it's going to be a 7-wood week. Because, like, for us, when we go play, like, Torrey Pines at the beginning of the year, that's a pretty obvious 7-wood week. The rough's about 4 inches, and you get a lot of those shots from, like, 180 to 200 if you're in the rough, where you can kind of try to run it up. And around this golf course, it's almost more of a decision whether or not you're going to use the 7-wood or the 3-iron, because most of the lies, you either can get like a 7-iron on it because it sits up, or you're just going to hit a lob wedge 50 yards down the fairway. So really, a lot of times you hit in the rough, you can get fortunate sometimes with the lie, but for the most part, I think you'll be wedging it out pretty much.
Also wanted to ask you a little bit about your confidence level from this perspective of just how you feel about your game, how much it's changed from the start of your season through, and what makes it spike. Is it simply winning that makes you feel good about your game, or are there various like checkpoints that you could feel it increasing?
Yeah, I think it's more of a feel thing for me. There was points in the year I really felt like I was trending most of the year. I felt like each week I was out, I was starting to play better. I was starting to feel more comfortable with my swing and my body, and everything was kind of getting back to normal. And I felt like I was just trending most of the year. And I think I talked about a decent amount in Houston. Houston, I finished second. That was right before the Masters. And that was when I really felt like I was starting to do some good things, and my ball striking just wasn't where it needed to be, but I was making a good amount of putts, and I felt like if I could just sharpen up my swing just a little bit more, I felt like I was going to kind of get into the place where I wanted to be. And then showing up at the Byron, I had a really good week there, and that was some pretty good confidence kind of moving forward.
Back right to Kira.
Scottie, last year after the U.S. Open, you mentioned that you didn't feel as prepared as you could have been, especially for the native areas around Pinehurst. How would you describe your preparation process going into now this year?
Well, I think it's a big difference having the week off. Memorial is always such a difficult test, and I think last year I won at maybe 8 or 9 under, and this year was at 10, and I won by a few shots. And so, it's just one of those golf courses where, that's a place that wears you down, and you have to be so focused for 72 holes that coming from that test to this one was pretty challenging back-to-back weeks. So having the week off was really important for me to get home, get some rest, recover. And I showed up here on Sunday and was able to play, I think, maybe 11 holes, and really get used to the conditions, and feels much more like my normal major prep versus last year, where you're coming in from basically a major championship test, coming into another one is pretty challenging.
And we hear so much about Oakmont being so difficult, but what are the green light places around here, if there are any?
Green light places, there's some opportunity when you're in the fairway, but a lot of it depends on the pin position on certain holes. Like a lot of it depends on where the USGA sets it up. There's certain holes where when you step on the tee box, 4 is going to be a really good score, or sorry, par is going to be a really good score. But there's certain holes where there's some opportunity. Like you look at 2, you look at 4, 5. When you're in the fairway, there's opportunity. But what was so special about this place is pretty much every time you're off the fairway, it's going to be very difficult, I think, for you to get the ball to the green. There's an element of luck when you hit the ball in the rough, but that's why I say this golf course is so well bunkered that. Especially for a golf course without trees, I think this is a place that can get away with it really well, because there's just so many bunkers everywhere, and they're deep, and it's a real penalty when you hit the ball in the bunkers here.
Front right.
Scottie, for those who care about such things, sportsbooks have said you're an overwhelming favorite this week. Do you notice those kind of things at all? Do you pay any attention to it? And then somewhat related, when you're out there, do you ever hear from fans that maybe have a financial investment in your outcome?
I think everybody hears from fans, whether they have a financial benefit or anything in their outcome. That's why I had to get rid of my Venmo, because I was either getting paid by people or people were requesting me a bunch of money when I didn't win. It wasn't a good feeling. But no, I don't pay attention to the favorite stuff or anything like that. Starting Thursday morning, we're at even par, and it's up to me to go out there and play against a golf course and see what I can do.
Any other questions for Scottie? Right here. Back right.
I was talking to a player today who felt like the first hole was maybe the only hole that you could miss the fairway and still hit the green with your shot, just the way it kind of able to roll balls up. Are there any other holes where you feel like if you miss the fairway, you can still hit the green?
Well, the right rough on one's maybe the only spot. A lot of it is just completely lie dependent. Like there's some areas, like the rough is so thick and healthy that sometimes it stays on top, and you can actually get a club on it. Like, I played with Sam today, got to number 3 and 2 after he hit it in the rough. But then you get holes like 7 and 9 where you're so far back that it can be pretty challenging. But a lot of it really just totally depends on the lie. And sometimes you get a good one, and probably more often than not, you're going to get a pretty bad lie every time you hit it in the rough.
Back to Doug on the left.
I don't know how much work you got in last week, but the week off you have before the majors, how is your practice session? Is it any different than it was going into Augusta, going into Quail Hollow, coming into here?
It was maybe slightly different last week, just based on needing to get a bit more rest after Memorial. I think it can be a bit different coming off of a tournament in which you win, or you're at least close to winning, like when I mean, Memorial is one of the biggest tournaments that we play outside of, I'd say, the majors and the players. It might be the biggest. And, with Mr. Nicholas being there on site and it being his golf course, I think that's a tournament they're all very motivated to play well in. And it's such a difficult test. I think a lot of that factors into the mental fatigue. Like coming off a week in Houston where the scores are a bit lower and you can kind of hit it anywhere off the tee, and it's more of a second shot golf course. It's just a different feeling when the week is over, when you're in contention there versus, like, for instance, when you're in contention and you finish second and playing with the lead at Memorial and having to grind it out. It's just a different level of fatigue, and so I took a couple days at the beginning of the week to rest, and got back to work on Wednesday. Well, I kind of equate some of the major tests to, like the majors in tennis, you're playing on a different surface. Like you got grass, clay, and then a hard court, and it's a different style of game. And the U.S. Open compared to the Masters is a completely different type of test. I think in the Masters you have a lot more shot making when you get around the greens because it's a lot of fairway. There's pine straw. There's not really the rough factor. And then when you get here, it's a lot of hacking out of the rough. They still have to be extremely precise, but it's a bit more of like when you talk about strength and power, I think that becomes more of a factor at these tournaments because when you hit in the rough, you got to muscle it out of there. And it's just a different type of test than you see at the Masters. Both of them are fantastic tests. This is probably the hardest golf course that we'll play maybe ever. And that's pretty much all it is. It's just a different type of test. Like when you miss a green at the Masters, the ball kind of runs away and it goes into these areas and you can play a bump, you can play a flop. There's different options. Here, when you hit the ball over the green, you're just getting some heavy rough and it's like, let me see how I can pop the ball out of this rough and somehow give myself a look. It's just a different type of test. And I don't know if one of them's better than the other, but they're just different. And here, the winning score I don't think is going to be what the winning score was at the Masters. It's just different.
A few more, front right, Adam.
I just wanted to follow up on that Venmo account you've closed. What's the most someone would send you as a thank you? What's the most anybody?
Oh, I don't remember the most that somebody would send me. Maybe a couple bucks here or there. That didn't happen nearly as much as the request did.
On the left, Keith.
Scottie, the way the U.S. Open is set up, it always ends on Father's Day. What's it mean for you to play on Father's Day on a Sunday at the U.S. Open?
Yeah, it's oh gosh, sand in the eye. No, it's very special. My dad is here this week, and I'm a father now, so it's a very special day, and Mother's Day is pretty special too. And being able to come here and hopefully be playing on Sunday and have a chance, and would be pretty fun.
What's more reactive of you being a father now or playing for your father?
What's more reactive?
Yeah, what brings more out of you, being a father now or playing for your dad?
I think having a son gives me much greater appreciation for my dad. I don't think, when you're young, you don't really understand what it's like to be a parent. I don't think my dad can tell me what it's like, but I don't think you understand it till you experience, looking at your own son. And then I think being on this side of it, it's given me much greater appreciation for, my parents and the work that they did being, on this side of it, not the one receiving all the love, the one giving it to your son instead,
Two more up the middle, Paolo.
You mentioned the mental fatigue and the mental tests that these tougher golf courses kind of bring. How do you manage that? And just in the same way that maybe you prepare for harder shots, is there something you do to prepare for that mental fatigue that you feel at the end of one of these rounds?
Well, no, I think it's more just managing it throughout the course of a season. And so, there's certain weeks when you finish where you just feel like after the PGA, I just feel like you got almost hit by a bus just because there's so much emotion. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the tournament after you win, and you basically don't get any sleep that night because you still got adrenaline, your stomach hurts, and it's just a heightened state of emotion, I think. And so I've learned over the course of my career to focus a little bit more on the rest side of things, especially when I get home. Early in my career, I've always been the guy that I think works the hardest, and if something's not the way that I feel like it should be, I'm going to go out there and figure it out, and that's just kind of how I've always approached things. And at the early in my career, I was able to come out to courses and I could spend as much time as I wanted to out here, and that's just because I didn't really have any other obligations. I just come up and I could just practice, and do whatever I wanted to do. But now things a little bit differently with having a wife and a son, and some other obligations at tournaments as well. It's just the schedule is just a bit different.
Last question here on the right.
Hey, Scotty, I read a story from 2016 that said you rushed through your first round to watch the NBA Finals. Do you recall that? And will this year's Finals affect your schedule this week?
This year's finals probably not going to affect my schedule as much. I think Golden State was playing Cleveland last time in the finals, and I really wanted to watch that because you had LeBron playing Steph, and ever since the Mavs traded Luka, I've just been a little bit, a little bummed watching the NBA. It hurts a little bit still, so we'll have to regroup and get ready for next season for the Mavs.
We appreciate the time, Scottie.
Thanks.